Hello, guys, and welcome to Stories, the True and the Fictional, or Story Chat, as we like to call it. Before we bring in our returning guest, this episode is brought to you by Rebecca Cassells and the Rising Dawn series, but not only Rebecca Cassells and the Rising Dawn series, myself, J.A. Bryden, and my book, Letters from the Emu War, now available. Link in the show notes. There's no international delivery yet, but I'm going to set that up on my website because my publisher doesn't believe in sending stuff overseas. At least at this point, but I will get it out there. But now that the promo is out of the way, Daniel Roy Lehman, thank you for coming back. How are you?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Living the dream, mate. Living the dream. And Ryan's back from hospital. How are you, Ryan?
I'm good. I'm doing well.
So, are you ready for these icebreakers, Dan? These round two.
Yes, I am. The questions are a little more difficult this time, but I'll see what I can do.
All right, Ryan, how are you feeling? Do you want to go first? Do you want to go second?
Yeah, look, it's been a while, so I'm happy to go first. I haven't even read the icebreakers, to be honest, and that's how professional I am. Okay, I'm going to start with this one. So, Daniel, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was real little, I always wanted to be an inventor when I grew up. That was everything I wanted to do, was just invent, create, blah 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 blah. Telling people about, I'm pretty sure I accidentally invented Heelys because I told everybody in the world about how great it would be if your rollerblades, you didn't have to take off your shoes and try and keep track of them, and you could just, pull them out of your shoe or something like that. And then lo and behold, somebody invented that. Could have been me. Could have been me, but alas, it is kind of neat that I ended up being in a position where I create things anyway, but just not in a literal sense, I guess. But yeah, always wanted to be an inventor. I actually told anyone who would listen that I wasn't ever going to get married, because they would mess up my stuff, and that would ruin my inventions. They'd get into everything, and now that I've been married 3 times, I realize that's exactly what they do.
Yeah, you haven't heard of a lair, like or a man cave or something that,
Yeah, those are for people that are a little wealthier than I am. I have a corner of the living room with a secondhand desk that's got shoe marks on it.
And tape along the ground.
Yeah. I have to do squats the whole time I'm writing.
Now, what I did is I actually claimed the living room as my domain. So I then bought the expensive TV when I was working, bought the expensive Sony TV, bought the PS5, and decked it out with the recliner. And it's like, this is my domain. I'm just lucky that Steph likes to watch stuff on her tablet more than she does on TV. So
see, I've tried that before. That's why I've been married 3 times.
But no, I like inventing. Like I think we all have that little part of us inside of when we're younger, before we grow up and realize the truths of the world, that we want to just build things to make the world better. But essentially, you're right. You do that with your stories, so you're sort of halfway there.
Well, I mean, even in this, it's not even just in a sense where, like, I invented a world that people don't like. In the actual story, they go through the process in certain chapters. They'll go through the process of inventing things using the technology and the magic that's available in their world. Like in book 2, they build an airship using magical runes and stuff like that, and that's a minor part of the story. It's like, I think it's in one chapter, maybe 2 chapters, where like other stuff's going on, but they're also building this airship in the background and trying to figure out how to do it using a hard magic system, because I love hard magic systems. I think I kind of feel like soft magic systems are cheating because you just go because magic, and that's it. I feel like the characters don't necessarily need to know all the rules, but I feel like you as the person writing it should at least know the rules to what magic can and cannot do, right?
Yeah, no, I agree totally. it makes that much more of an interesting story.
Yeah.
Whereas you're not just sort of explaining away like, oh my God, we just built this airship. How did we do it? Magic.
Yeah.
You're actually going through and explaining the process and how they weave magic in with, intelligence and wisdom in their own mind to create something so amazing. So
Yeah. It's kind of funny because of my beta readers, you can tell who works in an artistic field and who works in a like logical field, because the people who work in artsy type fields tend to love the other chapters, and then the people who work in like the computer programmers and stuff like that, they love that. And I don't know if it's because I used to be a computer programmer that I like the hard magic setup so much, and it just meshes with my brain, or what it is, but it seems to vibe really well with people who like that structure in their
awesome.
thought process and such.
Excellent. All right, Jamie, question number
Awesome.
2.
Question number 2. If you could have a talking animal sidekick, what would you pick? And bonus points for the type of voice, accent, or, that it
Well,
would
I
sound
mean,
like.
the voice is no question. I mean, that's Morgan Freeman. It's got to be Morgan Freeman's voice.
Yes. And what animal?
As far as what animal, I actually thought really hard about this one when you guys sent me the question, and even ran it by some fans of other fantasy stuff that I follow to try and get some insight so that I could pick the right thing, because my gut instinct was to say dog,
Yeah.
because I love dogs, always have loved dogs. They're man's best friend, so on and so forth. But this little creeping sensation of, what if their happiness is all a lie?
Yeah. Yeah.
and now he can
Yeah.
tell me about how sad he is all the
Yeah.
time, and I don't want to do that, man. I don't want to risk
Yeah.
it. So I have to go with Raven, just for
Raven.
coolness factor. Having a raven, the fact that ravens, I don't know if you guys know this or not, probably because you're from Australia and you guys have a better education system. But but ravens can mimic speech as well
Yeah.
as parrots
Yeah.
if they're
Yeah.
trained. There's like 5 Americans that know that. So
Yeah. No, I've
but
seen the videos.
because of that, I could theoretically teach my raven to not only mimic speech but actually converse with people, so that once I'm gone, or if the raven
Mhm.
decides to part ways or whatever, he can go hang out with somebody else. And told my wife about maybe starting up a little side business with my little magic raven, just waiting outside of cemeteries, and just having the raven fly down, land on the new person's tombstone, and say, "Don't grieve, guys, I'm at peace," and then fly away. And all those people at that funeral are now
Yeah.
relieved, I guess, because they think
Yeah.
they view this as some sign, and realistically, it's just me with my little magic raven
Or
trying to make the world a better place.
the raven will land on the gravestone and say to the people, "Get busy living, or get busy dying."
I
just
had forgotten that it's Morgan Freeman's voice.
Yeah.
You guys didn't include that in the question, so I don't know if it
No.
would be ominous or not if it came out in
Well, he's got
Morgan Freeman's voice.
he's got a very unique voice,
Grieve
so
not.
you know.
I am at peace.
Yes. Yeah. There you go.
I love it. I love it. All right, question number 3 is, you're a king/queen/supreme leader/president for a day. What do you do?
That is easy. I would revamp the entire election system
Okay.
for everything. There'd be no more people who get into politics for 50, 60 years and so on and so forth, and then can hide behind, well, back in my day it was a different time. Look, I don't care what you did back in your day. I care that you are excusing it in present day by saying at the time it was okay.
Yeah.
Because it was never okay. It was just that society decided to make it okay,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So I would revamp the entire election system. If I had my way, you wouldn't even know who you were voting for. anyone who is running for office would have to fill out a questionnaire type deal, like what are your thoughts on these hot button issues?
Yeah.
And if your stance, Jamie, is I think all babies should be aborted. Period. End of statement. That
Yeah.
goes on the little list. And
Yeah.
Ryan's stance is I don't think anyone should ever be able to abort. Period. That goes on the list. And I'll throw my stance up there as well and say, you can't have it you can't have one extreme or the other. You got to have a middle ground and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
My extremely long-winded answer would also be an option. And then when somebody goes in to vote, they just see those options
Yeah.
and they pick which option. And whoever gets the most options is elected.
Yeah.
Because the fact that people go in there and they vote right or left
Yeah.
without knowing anything about the person is just dumbfounding to me. People are just blindsided by who they just voted for and act surprised when they get in office and do things.
Yeah. It should definitely
don't
be
know,
about policies. It should be
Yeah.
about the policies, not the popularity, contests.
The last couple of elections we've had here, I've actually said to some of my family members, could you tell me a few things that this person that you want to win actually stands for?
Yeah.
And they'd be able to recite the slogan,
Yeah.
and that's about it.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell you their stance on anything other than, well, they're a Democrat, they're a Republican. Like,
Yeah.
of course I'm going to vote for them.
Yeah.
The whole two-party system just needs to die.
Yeah. Well, we've got it. It's different over here because while you guys vote for the president, we vote for a party, and then the party can choose whoever the leader is within that.
Yeah, you guys
So
do it the exact opposite of us because we have that as well. That just happens first.
That's why President Obama met 4 of our prime ministers in like 4 years. Because it was just get rid of him, get rid of him, get rid of him. Yeah, no, and I hate our I gotta be careful because Australian government they like to track you down and stuff. But no, we got it's basically you got right and left, but they mainly agree on the same stuff. They kind of pretend to be opposed to each other, but they all kind of agree, and you're just like you got to have different views.
We have a lot of the same, and the biggest thing that bugs me is that not even the politics side of it, but the people seem to turn each other into monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just having a discussion. Like if you think that abortion is something that women should have a right to, someone can't sit there and go, I humbly disagree and I think this is why. Instead they scream murderer at you.
Yeah.
And the opposite is true as well. If you think abortion should be off the table, instead of sitting there and saying, well, maybe it should be on the table and here's why, people just scream that you don't care about women and you think that they're nothing but baby factories. And there's middle ground. Like 99% of the world doesn't think that women should be forced to carry babies or babies should be killed. Go figure. The vast majority of us hate doing both of those things. But it's not a matter of the fact that you push people into these extreme sides of an argument makes it very difficult to find any middle ground because you're too busy contributing monstrous deeds to the other person, or attributing, not contributing.
Well, maybe we need to send in your Morgan Freeman Raven to settle things down.
Maybe it would be hard to argue with Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, 100%. But let's move away from politics now and get to our next question.
I'll just wake up now. Okay, cool.
No. I love talking about politics. I follow a lot of people, but I'm not gonna get into that. What book or story would you like to see adapted into film?
See, I thought really hard about this one. It's weird that this one was more difficult than the last one, but I think I've finally decided if I can only pick one, it would have to be Warbreaker by Sanderson. If you've read it,
Oh,
No.
not personally.
it's a very unique magic system that involves, in order to power your magic, instead of using like yourself or anything like that, you use color from around you, and it absorbs it from the world and pulls it out of the world around you. It's a really neat concept,
Cool.
but it's really hard to read. It's something that would look beautiful on as a movie or a TV show or something like that, where you could literally watch the color drain out of all these things. But trying to read it, it seems like every other paragraph you're running into, and then the color pulled out of this, and then the color pulled out of that. I know the color's pulling out of it, and as a movie, that just blends into the background. It's just happening. You don't have to spend 10 minutes reading a page and a half about how the color just pulled out of this scarf or color pulled out of those pants, or it's something that would lend itself beautifully to the screen. But as far as just my personal favorites and stuff like that, I always got to go with Drist from R.A. Salvatore. He should have his own series spanning 80 seasons. Like it should never go off air.
So any idea on a director or leading role, actor or actress, or
For Warbreaker, I haven't gotten far enough into it because of the way that it reads,
Yeah.
to really cast anybody. And I honestly don't pay enough attention to directors to know who I would pick for that role. For the Drist ones though, I think the people who did Matrix, the directors for Matrix,
cool?
The Wachowski.
yeah, Wachowskis, they would I think they would do a good job with that, just because they film action in a way where you actually see the action, and that's
Yeah.
what a lot of is in the Driss saga of, he's dual wielding dark elf. Like you gotta watch him fight. That's
Yeah.
what his whole shtick is.
Yeah.
For the actor to play Drist, that one's really tough. Because he's a drow, and I don't know many drow actors, so it would be difficult to fill the role. If I had to pick someone, maybe a young Idris Elba. Can I
Yeah.
pick a younger version of, because
Yeah, sure.
Idris, however you pronounce his name,
Yeah.
he's a little old for the role, even though he's younger than Drist, but elves.
Well, they can de-age people now. Like they've done it with Luke Skywalker. I think the first film they did was Tron with Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, and it looked so good.
Yeah.
It looks so good to
Yeah.
use that for the whole film.
Yeah.
I think it would be better just if we grab like a 16-year-old version of him instead of trying to de-age him with graphics and all that. Save the graphics budget for when the Harples show up.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys even know who that is. But it's a crazy family of wizards from the series that blow up everything, turn people into goats. The usual.
Sounds like Michael Bay should get involved.
Yeah. Transformers. Is that one I actually know? Is that the guy who did Transformers? Oh my gosh!
But he
I actually know a director.
he likes to blow things up.
When he's not directing Victoria's Supermodel commercials, he directs really movies where everything gets blown up.
Yeah.
Does he do Victoria's Secret commercials as well?
Yep.
Weird. I didn't realize they were admitting they were blowing those women up.
That's why whenever he does a film and he wants to have a female nerd, he just grabs a Victoria's Secret model and puts glasses on her. Mm-hmm. He's like, nerd. Oh, you are not a
nerd. No, that's how every nerdy female I've ever met has looked. I don't. It must just be an Australia thing.
All right, question number 5. Mr. Elon Musk has perfected his electric time machine and has put you in charge of organizing a dinner party of historical figures. Who do you put on your guest list? And I think we'll limit it to 5.
No.
I don't even have 5 people. Because this is another one that gave me a lot of trouble because I wanted to say something like, you know, super profound and say like George Washington and let's hear about what they actually meant in the Declaration of Independence and what do you guys think about the right to bear arms now that you see what actual weapons can do? What do you think?
Yeah.
And in reality, I would pick Stephen Hawking first and foremost because he had a dinner party for time travelers. I don't know if you guys know that or not.
I think I
He
heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, he legitimately hosted an entire party and then sent out invites the day after. And I just it would be cruel to have a dinner party where time travel is involved and not
Not
go
have
grab him and bring him and say, "You were right, buddy. You just no
had the
one could
date wrong."
show because they were busy then. Like, but we got you now. Don't worry about it." But other than that, I would just pull inventors because I'd be curious to talk to them about what they think about technology more so than
Mm,
anything. Like,
yeah.
yeah, you're super proud of your light bulb. Look at this TV. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, man, that's a really cool wheel. You did good work there. Let's hop in my car and drive down to McDonald's where we're gonna type in our order ourselves on a magic screen. Like,
The caveman to be screaming the entire time.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. It would just be a trip to see the wonder in their eyes because as anybody who has ever loved Legos can tell you,
Yeah.
when you are someone who builds things and then you see what somebody else has built and it so much surpasses what you've been able to do, it's magic.
Yeah.
That's as close to magic as we get in this life is seeing that wonder in people's eyes when they discover something somebody else was able to make. And
Oh yeah,
that's just it would be worth it.
I can as an avid comic reader, I can attest to that. The moment I saw, I'll go back a long, long time ago when I went and saw the first Avengers film after reading Avengers on the pages for 20 odd years, and then
Hmm.
watching what someone did to invent that to bring them to life was like
Mm.
I had a tear in my eye when that happened. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I can totally understand that. Even though I didn't create the Avengers, if I did, I'd be a very rich man. But um, just to know that like something that I loved and had read for so many years and got me through so many tough times, and you see it on the screen done as accurately as they did it. Um, I couldn't imagine that. So I couldn't imagine inventing something like that, and then a couple of hundred years later, seeing what it's become. It just,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. And that accuracy thing makes a huge difference
Oh
because
yeah.
I can tell you from experience that the tears in your eyes from seeing how well they did Avengers
Mhm.
were very different than the tears in people's eyes after watching Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Especially
The live action of that
uh,
was rough.
as an anime fan, yes, I agree with you 100%. I watched it. I think I've only ever watched it once. Um, oh yeah, let's just M
I
Night.
couldn't
I'm a
I
massive M
couldn't
Night
even
fan, and he lost a lot of respect in that for me.
I couldn't even finish it, man. Like it got to the part where the earthbenders are doing their little synchronized tap dance to throw a pebble like this big at somebody, and it's like
Yeah,
Toph is rolling over in her grave, like
yeah.
right now. Like I can't believe you 8 guys tap dancing to toss a rock at somebody. Like, come on.
We should have invited Chris on here, Jamie. He would have had a very our friend Chris is a massive, massive anime, and we've had this discussion with him before too. So,
Mm.
oh, seriously, but we don't want the podcast to go for like 17 hours because he will find every,
Yeah.
you know
But
what I mean?
I have a friend who makes fun of me for anime all the time because I will never admit to being an anime fan
Okay.
because I don't the genre doesn't feel right to me.
Mm.
But
Okay.
every anime I have ever watched, I have enjoyed.
Mhm.
Like, and it's like, I know logically I'm probably an anime fan. Oh, sorry, there is one anime I watched that I didn't enjoy. Bleach, with the move in one way and then the other. It was
Okay.
just I finally understood the reason for the beach episodes that every anime seems to have, where they're just like, we're out of ideas. Why don't we
Yeah.
just draw people in bikinis? And Bleach was tried to stay away from that, and good on him for that, but just randomly deciding we're going to do this world ending plot, and then, we're going to end on a cliffhanger. And the very next episode is this completely different world ending plot that has nothing to do with what you just watched and what you tried to tune in next time for.
Yeah.
And I got tired of it. It was a neat idea. I couldn't do it.
Well, the fact
The
that
only,
most animes have like 500-600 episodes per season, like Naruto and our friend Chris is currently watching One Piece, and he's I think up to episode 620. So I said to him yesterday, "Oh, so you're halfway through season one?" And he's like, "Yeah, I have an insane
about
amount of
that.
episodes." But yeah, I mean they're bound to run out of. I'm a casual anime fan, so there's certain anime that I will watch. Like I love the Castlevania series on Netflix, which is absolutely amazing because I'm a big horror fan. So I
Mhm.
love Castlevania. I've watched My Hero Academia. I love that kind of idea. And then I watch stuff like the Vinland Saga, which is fantastic. Like I watch bits here and there, but our friends Chris and Mike, they're like that's pretty much mostly what they watch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
my
they
friend Justin's the same way. It's all he watches. I've even recommended him some live action stuff, and he's like, I don't know about that. And it's like, it's Star Wars. Like, you have to watch it. And he's like, I don't know about that. Is it any good? Come on. Haven't heard of that.
oh God.
Well, welcome to the anime podcast. Well, let's talk about you now, Dan. Like, what have you been working on lately?
Lately, I've been doing a lot of research for book 4.
Book
I
4.
think I told you guys last time. My wife is a teacher,
Hmm.
so I write almost exclusively during the summers
Yep.
because I have a absolutely terrible memory.
Mm.
So anytime I try to sit down and write more of the series to ensure I don't have plot holes, I
Hmm.
read everything I wrote, and then I can start. So the more books I have out, the more I have to read before I can write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And while my wife's teaching, I'm with our daughter, and it doesn't exactly lend itself well to an environment where I can sit down and read 3 consecutive books and then have the wherewithal to type some more information out.
Yeah.
So during the summer, we essentially switch jobs, and
Yeah.
I go to work and I treat writing like it's a 9 to 5 job, and I go up and I type and type and type until I pass out. Then I wake up and type some more, and 5 o'clock hits. I hit the bell and I come on downstairs. Um, and in the meantime, I do spend some time like researching, thinking of ideas, and so on and so forth. And one of the aspects for book 4 is it takes place in a town called, I told you I have a terrible memory. I have to check my map. Silmaroon. Town called Silmaroon. It's a slavery town.
Okay.
Um, and the heroes of the series are trying to obviously set slaves free because slavery is bad. Go figure. Um,
Mm.
but there are little things that happen in the background that I can picture that wouldn't be fully described in the books. Like, here's slaves playing a game in the background. Um, and the completionist in me goes, yeah, but what is that game? I need to know more about that game. Are they playing checkers? Are they playing chess? Those don't really fit in with my world. Like they could. Would they have the same name? Let me see. So I actually joined a group of people dedicated to making games, which is evidently a massive community. Board games,
Wow.
not video games. Evidently,
Yeah.
there's a massive community of people who make board games. That blew me away. But I talked to a bunch of them about ideas and fleshed out like a fully functioning board game so that it could be mentioned in the background of a couple of scenes. And like ideally, I think it would be neat if, some I did the same thing with my language for the Flory, where I just, I went way too hard at it because, I was that nerd who fell in love with Salvatore's world and Dristawarden and the Drow and all of that, and went out and tried to learn the language. And I know there's Star Trek nerds out there as well that learn Klingon. There any fan there's people who speak Elven. There's people who speak Dothraki. There any fantasy language or sci-fi language that's ever been invented. I guarantee you, there's at least one nerd who went, nice. This language is fully fleshed out. I'm gonna learn it. I'm gonna go wish my dad happy birthday in Dothraki because I think that would be the best way to do things. So I tried to fully flesh things out to the point where if that one nerd happens to stumble across my book, they have an avenue
Yeah.
to actually find that stuff. Because when I started trying to learn how to speak Drow, there was like 5 words that were known, and that's because they were specifically in the book. And then like you could learn Elven all day long, but the language of the Drow, you just can't do. And I apologize to any listeners who pronounce it Dro.
You're
I can't
wrong.
do it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's hooked on phonics. BROW brow, DROW drow. I'm so sorry. I know people are really divided on that, and for whatever reason, I respect your opinion and respectfully disagree.
Yeah. That's funny because I even heard that people argue over how Mario is pronounced. Like some people say Mario,
Mm.
and I'm
See, I
like
thought
going,
that was usually you guys.
no, we're Super
I thought, I
Mario.
thought.
Super Mario.
See, over here it's Mario. It's flat
Yeah.
out.
Wow.
Everybody in America pronounces it Mario. I thought it was an overseas kind of thing where people said Mario.
Well,
Or
we're constantly adopting American things, so maybe we started to say Mario right.
maybe. I mean, America's the exact same way. We just steal from absolutely everybody when it
Yeah.
comes to our language. Like it's it's ridiculous.
Well,
Kindergarten.
that's like and Jamie brought up a good point. He watched a movie last weekend, and then I ended up watching it. Like my dad came down to visit me, and my dad had actually watched that movie as well. That new movie out called Air about Nike and
Okay,
they had the creation of Air Jordans and stuff like that.
Nike.
Yep.
We've been pronouncing what we like to say. I believe the correct pronunciation is Adidas. We pronounce it Adidas.
But like all of Australia.
It's so sing-songy. Adidas.
That I've growing up, and that my dad said the same thing, and my dad's in his 60s, and we both said the same. And then I was surprised that Jamie messaged me the exact same thing. We've always said it Adidas, but and then watching that movie, we're like, oh shit, it's Adidas.
Like they wouldn't stop saying it. It's like they knew Australia was going to be watching it. They knew Australia was pronouncing it wrong, and they're like, Adidas. Yeah, you know what they're going to do at Adidas? Well, let's go over to Adidas. Adidas aren't going to do this. And I'm going, stop it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. My wife and I were actually talking a little while back. I wish I could remember the words, but there's a couple of words that just Colonel and COLONEL, Colonel. We knew that they meant the same thing, but we just assumed, like, you read COLONEL N-E-L, and you read that Colonel, and it's, Colonel Sanders in the library with a knife or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you hear people say Colonel, and there's a couple of them like that where we just never realized they were the same exact word. And it's so weird seeing that disconnect with how is this pronounced versus how it's spelt. And I was a Hooked on Phonics kid. You guys have that over there? Hooked on Phonics?
I've heard the name, but I don't think so.
It's for really young kids, like 2 and 3-year-olds, to teach them how to read.
Okay.
And the whole thing is, sound it out, sound it out, sound it out. And it works amazingly for languages that have consistent rules on how letters sound.
Yeah.
And when you come to things like knight, as in Knights of the Round Table, and you say Knighthit because you're sounding it out, it doesn't work as much. No. But it does work really well for 90% of the language, maybe a little bit more than that. And I do try, at least in my books, to try and keep things on the sounded out spectrum, so that because it's always rough for me when I read something in a book and it's a word I don't know because the author had to make it up.
Yeah.
Like the language of the Drow, for example, is called Xanelress. Xanelleress. That's how I would pronounce it, is Xanelress. Looking at the word, it's probably not pronounced that way, but I learned it out of a book. And like nobody sat me down and said, okay, and this is the word Xanelress, and this is how you're actually supposed to pronounce it. So I tried to stay away from that. And I even have in the back of my book a glossary called a Swosel's Note. She's one of the characters in the book. She's an old historian type character. She writes my glossaries in character, writes my glossaries, including pronunciation guides for different words. Like, oh, if you want to say this, you just say, cow and then ball, and it together it's cowball. That's how you say it. So
that's handy. It's definitely handy for the younger generation coming up. I mean, me and Jamie both don't have kids, so we probably do have that phonics thing you were talking about. Well, because we're childless, we don't know anything about what the children are doing. So we probably have it out here.
I'm no child myself. Like I know about Hooked on Phonics from when I was a kid and used Hooked on Phonics.
Okay.
So it's been around for at least a couple of years.
But yeah, you're right with the whole kernel thing. You've got kernel as in military, you've got kernel as in popcorn kernels. They spell completely different, but
and pronounced exactly the same.
To me, from what I look at when I look at both words, the popcorn kernels makes more sense to say the word kernel because it's I think it's Kernel or something, or AL. So that's kernel for me. If you look at the word kernel as in military, it's like colonel.
Yep, that's how I read it in my head, is colonel.
Exactly.
And then if I have to read it out loud, I say colonel, because I know it's the word colonel now. But
exactly.
When you're reading it on the page, it's just easier to say, oh yeah, Colonel Sanders.
Colonel, yeah.
And one more thing on pronunciation, because this annoys me when Americans say Aussie, but how it's spelled, they say Aussie. But for all you Americans out there, it's Aussie.
Yeah, so as in picture this, Ozzie.
Yeah.
Like Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, for Aussie, we do say Aussie. Yeah. For Aussie, that's AUSSIE, like people from Australia. Is that what you're saying should be Aussie?
Yeah. 100%.
What?
Yeah.
And it's weird. Me being a massive wrestling fan, there's a tag team from Australia which used to be in Japan, but they've made their move over to America because they've gotten quite big, and they're called Aussie Open. So as in like the tennis tournament, Aussie Open. So but every time they're on TV and I'm listening to the American commentators, they're like Aussie Open, and I was just like Aussie as in, but I get it. It's exactly the same thing as the Colonel thing.
Yeah.
because it's spelled Aussie, so you think Aussie, but
Yeah.
we pronounce it Ozzzie, Aussie.
So
You know,
is it Australia? Do you
uh,
would you guys?
Australia. We say it's
So
we
it's
really
still
say
Aus in Australia, but
Yeah.
if you shorten it, it's somehow Aussie.
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 Yeah.
But then
Does
when
that
we
make
say
sense?
we
So
say
like my
Australia,
wife Jennifer, if she goes by Jen, she should
yeah,
be Jean
yes,
because
correct.
just
But no,
just change the
even
pronunciation because you dropped the
even
second half of the word.
even when you guys say Australia, we just say Australia. Like we lose the U when we say it. We say Australia, whereas you guys go Australia. We say Australia.
See, I'm no stranger to that because
Yeah.
I was raised in New Hampshire,
Okay.
and New Hampshire has a very distinct accent. You can ask Matt Damon about it. Where ours are just non-existent where they're supposed to be. They say no a lot like some very famous Australians do, because all those R's they take out of some places just somehow end up in other words that don't have any R's in them at all, and they just I'm gonna say no, and there's an R in it, and
Yeah.
like, you're gonna have to get the hang of that. No.
It's one of my favorite. There's this guy, Australian interviewer, and he interviews a lot of Americans and international movie stars, and he says we're going to play the game Guess the Aussie Slang, and it is
Okay.
so funny trying to figure out, them trying to guess what these things mean. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Seriously, one of my biggest pet peeves is American comedians and American actors. That's Melbourne. It's not Melbourne, it's Melbourne. Or
Yeah.
Brisbane, it's Brisbane. You know what I mean? Like I think Arj Barker did a really good
Yes.
bit about it. He said because Arj Barker lived out here for a while, I think,
Yeah.
and he would say, "No, I know how to say, Melbourne and Brisbane." And he said Brisbane, and
Yeah.
then he said, so I can't remember.
No, I remember exactly. This is my favorite joke because I don't know if you know Arch Barker. He's an American comedian, and he said everyone's calling him Argy Bargy because that's the Australian thing to do. He says, Argy Bargy, Argy Bargy. I can't believe you pronounced Melbourne right. He's like, calm down, Melbourne. This isn't my first trip to Victoria.
I love it.
Yeah,
That's
I
perfect.
love it. But yeah, that's a big thing. I will immediately switch off a TV show or if they don't take the effort to say. There's enough of us over there acting for
It
us
breaks immersion.
Yeah.
It breaks immersion. I get you 100%. That it's the same way with, some of the AI has run into a lot of that where it's just like, here's something that's 99% right, and then, oops, nobody thought to ask the Australians how to pronounce Aussie.
Yeah.
And we just found out 12 seasons in that it's Aussie. Whoops. And I see the amount of research I do and some of the other authors I do for stuff that I am making up. Like, I am just inventing this. Like, I don't have to research it. I could just make it.
Yeah.
But instead, I'm doing all this research, and I know other authors who are the same way, and they'll research for 10 years before they write a line because they want to get everything perfect in a world of make-believe.
Yep.
And then TV shows will produce, and they're like,
we'll say it however we like it. Yeah.
I don't really understand why we would need to research. It's Australia. What are they going to do? Boomerang us? Like,
oh, man.
That's funny.
Yeah,
well, we're sorry to attack America about stuff like that.
I'm not.
It's not even just America, man.
No, it's
Especially with our earlier references to anime, some of the stuff they have Americans portrayed like is just you mentioned My Hero, and the Americans in that are like, I'm gonna put the American flag on everything I do. Like, for breakfast, I'm gonna eat 87 pigs with a gun, and I'm just gonna ride an American flag to work. And there are some people that are that patriotic.
Yeah.
But most people, I would assume, are similar to Australia in that they're like, yeah, I like my country. I wouldn't want to leave.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna wear it every day.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
not gonna like write the My Hero Academia one
Yeah.
that the I can't remember her name. She called All Might mentor, and she was
Yeah.
riding like a red, white, and blue stingray or something like that through the sky, and it's
Yeah.
like that's Captain America. He does
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not so much not so
Yeah.
much the everyday citizen. Not so
Yeah.
much.
But the biggest example of what you were just talking about, and it really, I don't understand why, because most of the movie was filmed here in Queensland,
Mhm.
is Pacific Rim. So Pacific
Okay.
Rim, the two Australians that they had in there that were pilots, they're filming the movie in Australia. They got two New Zealanders to play two Australians, and
No,
they're
it wasn't
was
it
it
one American and one English?
one American, one English, that just ripped our accent to shreds. And it was
Well,
just like, you see those cartoons where they try and impersonate Australians back in the day, where it's just like,
mhm.
right, matey, crikey, it was literally just like that. And they filmed the movie in Queensland, where, I mean, hey, there might be some Australians around in our own country.
I've seen that there was a stand-up comedian who did a whole bit about that. I can't remember their name because again, my memory
That's
is
all right.
terrible. But their whole bit was about how they were ethnically Indian from India, and
Mhm.
they were doing these bits and so on and so forth. They were born there and had moved to America, and they were auditioning for this part of an Indian girl who was born in India and had moved to America.
Mhm.
And they didn't want anything to do with her accent. It was all wrong. She needed to fix it. She
Yeah.
needed to sound more Indian. And she just, she was like, what do you, I am literally the character you are casting. What do you, well, yes, but our viewers won't identify you as Indian enough. So you need to try and sound a little more Indian. And I think the punchline, she said she decided to walk away, and then they mentioned how much it paid, and she turned around and gave them their best like stereotypical Indian voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
everybody's got a
I'd,
price.
I'd like to thank everyone for joining us on the pronunciation and enunciation podcast today. Um, we've done little to no talking about your books, Daniel, which is kind of the reason why we get you on here. So why don't you just plug the absolute crap out of your books for our viewers so they know where to get them, where they can buy them, and obviously we know you've talked a bit about what kind of style they're in, but yeah, just give us your best plug. Pretend you're on Shark Tank and you're presenting your book, because we want
See,
people.
my issue with that is that I hate sales, man. I love writing a story that people enjoy.
Yeah.
I hate the business side of being an author. If
Mm.
if I had to summarize them, it it's the whole story is just mage vigilantes. There's a man-made type of mage called the Akynd, hence the name of the series being the Akynd Chronicles, only on Amazon.
There
Um
you go.
uh it this man-made type of mage, they take to a life of being a vigilante and just trying to rid the world of crime, corruption, evil in general, and in all of its forms. So unlike something like Lord of the Rings, where there's one defined bad guy who might, you know, parallel evil in general,
Mhm.
these guys are literally fighting evil in general. So they don't have a big bad guy like Sauron.
Mhm.
At least not at the beginning. There is stuff that develops. I don't want to ruin any plot points or anything like that, but there is stuff that develops and like reoccurring characters that are of the evil persuasion, like a Batman villain might be a
Mhm.
good example. Like, he doesn't have just one big bad evil guy for the series,
Mhm.
but the Joker is going to be in every reincarnation of
Yeah.
Batman there is, because
Yeah.
it's just such an iconic figure. Mr. Freeze, he might miss a reboot every once in a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
And I like the Joker kind of villains, where it's something that sticks with you. It's not just let's paint Arnold Schwarzenegger blue and call it a day.
Oh God.
Like,
Let's not go to that movie, because that movie should be stricken from the record. I'm sorry. Fat nipples, please.
Hey man, it's attention to detail that makes the word realistic, makes the world realistic.
Clooney
And
just needed a paycheck, all right? And I see that's the worst. Okay, I'm sorry for diverging again, but I'm a massive Batman fan. But look, how can one of my favorite Batman movies is Batman Forever? Because and look, both of them are done by Joel Schumacher, right? So Batman Forever, Jim Carrey as the Riddler, perfect, absolutely perfect. I absolutely loved him. I even was a big fan of Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face.
Two-Face.
I absolutely loved that movie. And
Mhm.
I thought, brilliant, he's doing the next one, fantastic. And then we get that piece of garbage. When you do Bane like that, I'm sorry, but no. Poison Ivy was the only one they got remotely correct. And what I figure they did with her, with the personality, because you got to remember this was back in like the 90s. They pretty much just said, "Hey, be like Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns, but a little bit sluttier." And it's actually, that's not Uma Thurman's fault, because she did a fantastic job. But no, that movie was just, and they made Batgirl Alfred's niece. I mean, everyone knows that it's Commissioner Gordon's daughter. It always has and always will be. Sorry, I'm ranting, but
Not everyone knows. Some of us
look at
never
me.
read the comics. You
Well, if you haven't read the comics,
you couldn't have spoiler alerted that for me. Now the whole
spoiler
thing's
alert!
ruined.
Spoiler alert from a comic that came out in the 1930s. I'm sorry.
Exactly, the whole thing's ruined. I was
Yeah.
just gonna get to that.
Well, let's quickly
Man.
segue back into your work. Quickly, who's your favorite character to write?
Gabrielle, 100%. She is for the 3 books that are out. She is a 7-year-old girl.
Mhm.
Who her parents essentially tried to use magic to make a precursor to the Akynd. They were
Yep.
trying to invent this man-made type of magic, and they got Gabrielle. She's a 7-year-old girl who has access to telekinesis, and she floats, and she doesn't really quite understand why she floats. It's just like this aura of magnetism where she's just floating along. The Stranger Things series has 11. That is a really good example, except for the fact that she was kind of an accident, whereas Gabrielle would be like the pinnacle of what they were supposed to be. She has complete precise control over telepathy, and everyone who meets her just tries to turn her into a weapon,
Oh
because
God.
she should be. She like she quad wields katanas because she can. Why wouldn't she just directs them like a conductor, because she doesn't need to use her hands. And everywhere this girl goes, everyone is trying to convince her to be a weapon, trying to convince her to be a weapon, either for good or for evil. And um, it's she just wants to be a kid, like it, and that's just it mirrors a lot of stuff that um, I think a lot of people in real life can relate to, because a lot of us had to grow up way earlier than we should have. And um I like the fact that that aspect makes her feel very real to me. I do like other characters. Tame is the front runner. I gotta pull up the book to show you a picture. Um, the little
Awesome.
creature up here is called a flory. These
Hmm.
guys with the butterfly like wings. Um, they they're a race of my own creation. That's the language I was talking about developing. Um, they have a little bit of ability to manipulate minds with their antenna. Sort of like if you've seen the movie Dreamcatcher by
Yep.
Stephen
Yep.
King.
Yep.
I almost said Stephen Hawking. Um, you know how they all go into their little
Yep.
headspace?
Yep.
Kind of like that, only their antenna allow them to do it to other people. So they touch you
Okay.
with their antenna, and then they can walk around in your little headspace,
Oh
and you
wow.
can walk around in theirs. And um, it's kind of like a a fully immersive. You don't have secrets from each other. And you mentioned Pacific Rim. It's a lot like that, where your brains are now synchronized. I'm in your brain. I can look around and know literally anything you know just by going, oh, there it is. Oh, okay, that's the password to your router. Thanks. And then, log into your Wi-Fi. Not that they have Wi-Fi, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And then the other aspect of them is their wings allow them to transform. They kind of form like a cocoon around themselves when they sleep, and they go through what is called reseda, um, where their subconscious is reflected externally. So however they view themselves, their body changes to match that. And some of them might wake up a foot taller because they went to bed feeling like they were on top of the world. They felt like a big tall winner or whatever. So they wake up a foot taller. And some of them, they had a really bad day and they feel like the world's beat them down. They might wake up literally a foot shorter, and or sorry, one third of a meter,
Mm.
to put that in Australian terms. But they they don't even have to stick within the same race. They can turn into theoretically anything as long as they believe that. And if you go to sleep as a Flory and have a really realistic dream about how you're a dwarf, you might fall out of your tree as a dwarf and wake
Mm.
up as a dwarf because of how realistic your dream was. And
Oh.
then because the source of their magic is their wings and dwarfs don't have them, they would actually need a different Flory to come and change them back in order for them to not just be stuck as a dwarf forever. And it was a really neat race to write. I think Eswosa would have to be my favorite for her. She's,
Mm.
like I mentioned earlier, she's the one who does my glossaries. She's long-winded. We relate. So yeah, but those are my two favorites by far.
Awesome. Um,
Excellent.
well, just before we let you go, do you want to do a where can people buy your books? Have you got social media that you want people to stalk you on and follow you and all that stuff? Just plug yourself.
I am trying to get back into my Instagram and Facebook, um, from when I had published through a publisher. I'm running through a lot of issues with getting back into them. For now,
Mm.
I am just doing everything on subreddit called the Akynd Chronicles. Akynd Chronicles,
Cool.
AKYNDCHRON. I'll just show you. Akynd
Hmm.
Yeah.
Chronicles.
Okay.
That
Chronicles.
right there, no spaces. It's a subreddit. There's only two posts in there. One describes the game that I told you about earlier,
Yep.
and one describes my attempt at crowdsourcing advertisement. As I mentioned, I hate advertising, so I actually went
Mm.
through and made a QR code that links to the subreddit I'm telling you about,
Cool.
and then went to a website called Redbubble that makes stickers and stuff like
Yeah.
that, all
No
kinds
Yeah.
of
Redbubble.
nerd paraphernalia. And
Hmm.
I put the QR code on stickers so that anybody who, you know, likes fantasy, or sorry, likes the idea of supporting an independent author but doesn't doesn't really want to read fantasy or anything like that,
Mhm.
if they want, they could buy a couple stickers and slap them around wherever they have permission. Don't vandalize, you know.
Yeah.
But like, I walked with a handful of them to some local bookstores and stuff like that, to see if they'd let me post them anywhere. They all said no. But the
Wow.
McDonald's or Mackies, I think is what you guys call them,
Maccas.
Mackers.
Yeah.
Okay, they let me. They let me put them all over the store. They did not care. They're like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Put them on the wet floor signs. Put them on the doors. Sure. And I thought that was so interesting that so many bookstores in the area were like, we don't really do independent authors, so
Yeah.
no. But then McDonald's was like, whatever. Like, so
We're all about advertisement.
yeah.
But I
But
also
other than
know,
that, the books are
Daniel, that
on they're on Amazon. It's
Mhm.
you can search Akynd Chronicles,
Yeah.
you can search Wizard's Requiem, or Heroes Recussance. I'll also send a link to you guys if you want to include that in the
Show
bottom
notes.
thing.
Yep.
So
yeah, they're very easy
yeah,
to find on Amazon because I was able to pull them up straight away.
Yeah.
awesome.
Even if you're in Australia on amazon.com.au, just do a search for Daniel Lehman and both of the books will pop up. You can get the Kindle edition, paperback, hardcover, and also I believe there's an audible version as well.
There is an audiobook for book one.
Mhm.
That was narrated by Brandon Goodling, one of the coolest people I know.
Mhm.
Um, he used to DM for me back in the
Awesome.
day. So it's really difficult for me to listen to it because every time I listen to it, I don't hear a narrator. I hear my DM
Yeah.
Yeah.
telling my D&D stories as though they're his D&D
Mhm.
stories, and I'm like,
That's awesome.
hey, like that's rough. But I've got a lot of good feedback about him. People evidently really enjoy
Hmm.
the way he narrates. He uses different voices and everything. So
Mhm.
it's definitely a step above the monotone audiobooks I used to listen to when I was in
Yeah.
the Navy. So
Well, even the audio book, because I'm an Apple guy with my iPhone and iPad, you can actually get the audio book through Apple as well, because that's how I found out there was an audio book. Um, it's available if you're in Australia. It's available through the Apple Bookstore for $23.99. So definitely, if you're an audio guy rather than reading, or you just don't have time to read books, jump on and grab the first book from wherever you get your good audiobooks from.
that's
Awesome.
news to me. I didn't know it was available
Yeah.
anywhere except for Audible.
Yeah, so I found it. Because I do all my reading. I try and do as much as I can through Apple because that's what I have. I can read it at my comfort, and I did a search for you, and the only thing that came up for you was the audio book for book one. So there you go.
Nice,
There you have it.
nice, awesome.
Well, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you again, Dan, for coming on. I know we had a bit of technical difficulties, but we got through it. And when this episode's out, no one will be none the wiser.
Exactly. Jamie's an
Woo!
edit wizard.
Can he make me look pretty?
I could probably put something over you, like a Disney character or
Smiley face.
Well, I asked him the same question, and he said I could probably put something over you, like a paper bag. And I said, well, no, that's fine. That's totally fine.
Challenge accepted.
Anything for the viewers.
All right, guys.
Don't
We'll
mess
catch
with them.
you next time.
See you next time.